Good evening, happy Sunday, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Orthodontist Live. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Fagala, and I gotta be honest, I'm feeling pretty amazing about tonight's episode and tonight's guest. This is one that I've wanted to have on for quite some time now. This is a guest that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with if you're a fan of podcasts, and I guess orthodontic podcast, rather. You're going to be a fan of tonight's guest. This is Dr. Lance Miller. You know him as the host of really what I'm feeling is maybe not the first orthodontic podcast, but the first to really gain major traction. Questions about that tonight. He's really a wonderful person. I consider him and count him a very good friend. He's also a very successful orthodontist. I think because he's so humble, you may not know that about him, but we'll talk about that some. He's also a true polymath. He loves words like I do, so that's why I just use the word polymath, meaning he has lots of expertise in a lot of different areas, many of which we will cover tonight. We're going to talk in three sections. We're going to talk about personal questions, talking about his practice background, and of course, his podcast. We're going to talk about investments, both financial and also practice investments. So we're going to talk about personal expert with that. We're also going to talk about investing in systems and investing in people. And then we're going to have a potpourri section where we get to talk about really whatever, talking about lifestyle design, being a private pilot, that's kind of exciting, overcoming resistance, and then the role of consultants. But first, we're going to play our theme song. Here we go. Let's get this rolling here. All right, so who do we have out there? Who do we got with us? I was wondering if there's anyone out there that actually worked today. Did anyone see patients on a Sunday? Anyone? Thanks for not watching the football game. It's a good one. The Chiefs are playing, right? So you could be watching that, but I'm glad that you're not, and you're instead foregoing football, and you're hanging out with Lance and with me tonight. Does anyone work on a Sunday? I've never done that. I never will. Fortunate, I guess, in that way. But if you do, let me know if you saw patients. Drop it in the comments section. Why don't we do that? Let me go ahead and bring Lance on the show. Lance, if you'll go ahead and request to join. I'm going to read Lance. It's got to be the shortest bio I've ever seen. So, Lance, I'm sure there's much more we could say about you. But Dr. Lance Miller is host of the well-known Elevate Orthodontics Podcast. He lives in Keene, New Hampshire, where he's the owner of a 3-location, single-doctor orthodontic practice. He attended dental school at UNC Chapel Hill, and he completed his orthodontic specialty training at St. Louis University, also lovingly known as SLU. If you listen to this podcast, you know that Lance has many hobbies, including hiking, skiing, playing the piano, cheering for UNC and BYU sports, and yes, even, I thought I liked you, Lance. So he is married, he has 2 children, he loves to travel with his family. I'm not seeing his request joining, so let's see. This is, last time we had the phone battery dying. This week it will be not getting Lance on the screen. So let's see. All right, Jennifer Eisen, who saw her niece today, put in a couple TMAs and realized, there we are. Hello, Lance. How are you, buddy?
Hello. Very good. Very good. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Yeah, you look awesome. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be on with you here. This is a big honor for me. I'm a big fan of what you're doing here with Digital Orthodontist Live. You know, I did this with the podcast, but you've upped the ante here by putting video. We have to look good, and it's live too. So I think you're really taking this whole thing to the next level here.
That's sweet of you to say. I think it actually just adds in the opportunity for things to go wrong. So there is that. You have the opportunity to edit people. So if you say something stupid, we're stuck with it. So I wanted to finish my thought on Jennifer Eisenhuth. She put a couple TMAs. She can't figure out her pan machine without an assistant. That's hysterical. Courtney says she can't do that either. I'm going to go with both of you and say I don't know that I could either. Lance, you strike me as someone that could figure out your pan machine. I don't know, maybe.
I don't think I've taken a pan in like a decade. I don't know.
I read that wrong. Okay. So how are you doing, man? You been okay? Everything good?
Doing all right. We're probably at peak leaf season here in New Hampshire. So this weekend and next is all of the leaf peepers coming into town, and it's really beautiful. It's a great time to come up if you're ever thinking of headed this way. This is the time of year you want to come out.
Leaf peepers. That's a new one for me. I'll break it up
I know.
now,
And as
but
I said the word leaf peepers, I noticed that we dropped, into single digits of watchers. So maybe we should move on to other topics.
you can't watch the number. I actually visited your office. This was last November, I think, for the NISO meeting, and it was gorgeous. You can see the leaves in that photo. I actually stopped outside your office. I kept peeking through the windows. You were not there. I'm thankful I didn't get the cops called on me.
Yeah, next time we'll have to be in town. I was at the NISO meeting, and so couldn't show you around, but we'll have you up here another time.
Sure, absolutely. So I want to get into a little bit of current events. I like to talk about that when it's applicable, when it makes sense. And so one thing that came up this week, and I know you're really into the financial world and that sort of thing more than I am, is the Smile Direct Club IPO. So there's been a lot of discussion about that in the Facebook groups, and I just want to get your take on it. And just to be clear on the front end, don't accept any of this as financial advice, nor as criticism of any particular company. Just we're having a commentary. Go ahead.
No, I think this is something that orthodontists have watched and are watching very closely. It's interesting to see a company like this go public and to see the reaction. The piece that was published this week, I think, was received by orthodontists with a lot of excitement. I'm somewhat more mellow about it. It was obviously written by a group that had admitted taking a short position in the stock. So, this is kind of the opposite of pump and dump, where you pump up a stock and then you sell it. This is like they've taken the short position. They want it to go down. So, this isn't reporting, right? This isn't like, necessarily, they're not out for factual purposes. And, even in that article, which I thought was well written and did do a good job of highlighting some of the concerns that are out there, they even mentioned that, there are other companies that could eventually move into this space. And so, I think as orthodontists, it troubles me that our kind of opinion of our profession or perhaps our mood for the day would be influenced by the rising and falling of the stock of a publicly traded company. I'd like to think of that we're in a little bit more control of our lives and that we have, a little bit more influence over what goes on in our own sphere. So I'm not too much into it, but certainly it's an interesting and compelling storyline.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I don't know where I'm at on, honestly. I follow 0% stocks and all that. So I see people, if a line stock goes up or down, it's shared. If this stock, I guess now goes up or down, it's shared. I don't know that you can really strike a huge commentary from it. I mean, this article, it was suggesting $2 in 1 year. They were shooting for what, $23. It closed the first day at 16.6. Pretty rough. It's around, I mean, it was
a stinker of an IPO for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see. You have a 1 year prediction. You don't want to make a prediction, do you?
I don't own any individual stocks, and I'm not going to start with Smile Direct Club.
Yeah, anyone who's followed you, that doesn't surprise them, I'm sure. So, and nor do I. I own no individual stocks. So I guess we're the wrong people to talk about that. So interested to see what anyone else thinks about that. But let's jump into questions about you, since again you don't own that stock. We've known each other for a few years. We've had a few meals together. We were in the original, or what I call the original, Facebook study group, Orthodontic Exchange. Really great years there, I think. But if anyone out there doesn't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I love being an orthodontist. We're here in New England, which is kind of a great place to be. We're about 2 hours from Boston, but yet we're in this very rural setting. The town that we're in is really perfect for us. We love it. My background, I was born in Canada. I've lived in Australia and Germany, North Carolina, Los Angeles, St. Louis. So we've lived all over, and this place really works for us and fits our family really well. I'm passionate about being an orthodontist. I wanted to find a job that I would be excited to come to work every day for 30 or 40 years. I don't have any plans to retire early or, financial independence, retire early. I like the financial independence, but perhaps not the retire early. So for me, I think we've talked a little about some of the hobbies, things I'm involved in. I have I wouldn't say a short attention span, because when I'm into something, I can really go down that rabbit hole pretty deep. But I have a lot of things that interest me, and I like to stay busy, and I like to be learning. That's kind of my personality.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that way. I've always got something new to be working on, and it's just the way my brain works. I'm happiest when I've got a few different pans on the fire, I guess.
Absolutely.
So we already talked about Keene a little bit. I showed the photo of me and Keene, but I want to talk about your practice. And I will say I'd never been to New England until last fall, and I really want to get back as soon as I can. I actually went up to Boston in the summer. We went over to Cape Cod. It was amazing.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
At your football team, the New England Patriots, who y'all went 5-0 today. My son keeps up with the records, and so he judges teams. He's 8, so I think he's trying to decide who's going to cheer for. So I think that New England is in the running because you're winning lots of games.
There you go.
But we went to Gillette Stadium to see the Stones. It was amazing. So
that is good.
And I know everyone is collectively groaning out there because you're a Patriots fan, but it's okay. I mean, you I guess you were a fan of them during the time where they weren't that great, right?
Well, no, see, I'm not really. I mean, I never really cheered for an NFL team. I was always a college basketball first, college football second. I moved here in 2011. And of course, it's been pretty great. And, we've kind of gotten into the excitement of things. But, I'd say my original love is North Carolina basketball.
Okay. Not a hard team to cheer for either.
No.
I'm seeing a connecting line there.
Yeah, I come by that honestly, though.
Fair enough. So tell me about your practice. How long you've been open, how many team members, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, we have 3 locations, 2 in New Hampshire, 1 in Vermont. We're kind of right on the border of Vermont and New Hampshire. We are, I think, a pretty traditional orthodontic practice in the sense that we have 1 doctor, we have a couple of receptionists, we have about a half dozen clinical assistants working on a given day, some financial people, and a treatment coordinator. And, I think we do pretty not middle of the road in terms of quality, but in terms of philosophy, right? I don't think we're not crazy non-extraction, but I don't think we're, super oriented to extraction. We do a lot of Herps appliances, and it's kind of twin brackets. And so I think our mechanics and the way that we practice, I think is, I think middle of the road in terms of I feel comfortably that I'm not out on the fringes of orthodontic treatment. We like to implement technology into our practice. We certainly have, digital x-rays. We have, scanners has become a big part of our practice with 3D printing. I'm not a cone beam guy yet. I'm not an in-office 3D printer guy, and I'm really trying to not become one. That doesn't really appeal to me. But our practice environment, I think, like a lot of offices, it's really focused on the experience. I want our patients to come here. I want them to feel like they're having an individualized experience, that we're connecting with them, that we're understanding what their needs are, that we're making a difference in our community, and that it's a fun place to work. For me, I guess primarily, and also for my team. I mean, I want to come to work every day and not be miserable and enjoy it. So those are our focuses, to do good work and to have fun. We're somewhat focused on, reaching our goals as well. Certainly we want, we've tried to grow our practice and to grow our reach. That's been a part of what we've been doing over the last couple of years. I think you would see in our practice what you'd see in a lot of other orthodontic offices in the country.
Yeah. So I think I fall almost into this exact same category, where I'm more focused on, and a lot of things I think we'll talk about lifestyle and the fact that my practice fits sort of the life that I want to lead and the hobbies that I have otherwise and my family. But I'm not like breaking any boundaries. I tried that a little bit. I tried to be like an early adopter on a couple things and I got burned with it. And so now I'm mostly focused. I'm a twin practice that does mostly non-extraction, but I'm not, dogmatic, and I don't have a cone beam. And, so I speak some for 3M, and they asked me to speak on clinical. And I'm like, I don't know what I'd speak about. Like, I feel like I'm doing orthodontics like 95% everyone else. So nothing exciting there.
Like, I love the Herps Appliance. I think it's great. We use it a ton. But I think because it's like out of patent or whatever, no one company makes it, no one talks about it. If it was some hot new, if the Herps was invented by a company today, it would be out of this world and the advertising would be insane for the Herps Appliance. But, no one's got a corner on that market. So, you don't hear about it as much as some of the other, appliances out there.
Well, maybe you and I need to hit the road and talk about the Herps. So we'll look into that. If any company wants to send us out to speak about the Herps, we've got it. Yeah, I also love that appliance. So I want to do this for Jonathan Nicosia. I don't see him logged in, but it's okay. He'll watch it later. Something, how big is Keene, New Hampshire?
25,000 people in Keene.
Not a huge town at all.
Nope.
But you made the national news for a Vietnamese restaurant. See if you can see that.
Absolutely.
So
that's right.
Growing up, I never had pho at all. I never saw pho until I moved to Memphis, to be honest. It's a Vietnamese soup. It's really delicious.
That's delicious.
I'm going to pronounce it for the purposes of this conversation as pho, like most people.
Oh, okay.
So it's Pho Keen Great. Okay?
Pho Keen Great, yeah. So Pho Keen Great was pretty controversial. We live in a small town, as you mentioned. So like in the newspaper, we literally get articles about like cats being rescued out of trees. That was a real article.
Yeah, good stuff.
So you can imagine that this was like a real juicy, discussion in our town, whether this was appropriate and they could put this sign up. And I'm glad that they were able to do it. And it's fun. It's fun that we got so much attention here in Keene. For that, our previous national attention was for Pumpkin Festival riots. This is 5 or 6 years ago when the kids at the college here. They hosted a huge weekend drinking extravaganza to coincide with our wonderful town pumpkin festival, and it ended in disaster. And there was like riot police, and the whole thing got canceled. So that was unfortunate. That was our previous national news item.
Well, thank the Lord, this has moved up on the Google search results. So have you eaten at Pho Keen Great?
I have. When I went, they were just opened. They were working on it. I think they needed a little. I mean, perhaps by now. I went in the first week or two. So I'm hoping that they continue to work on their recipe a little bit.
So maybe not Pho Keen Great, maybe Pho Keen Mediocre or slightly above average or something, right?
Yeah. There was room for improvement when I went.
Fair enough. We have an hour, and I just spent 5 minutes on that, so I appreciate you for that. Thank you, Jonathan Nicodemus, for that. So I guess here's a question about your practice. Is there anything you would have done differently? And I mean, did you start it from scratch? Did you purchase a practice? Like, how many years have you been at it? In that sense, what are some things you look back and you say, God, what was I doing? Like, why didn't I do that differently? Or do you feel pretty good about all that?
So I graduated in 2010. I worked as an associate for a year, and then I bought this office with all 3 locations. It was run by a husband and wife orthodontist, and they kind of tag teamed and worked the different offices. So I bought it all in one shot. It was a big practice with a big purchase price, kind of in a more remote area. It has worked out wonderfully for me. I feel truly lucky that I was able to have such a great relationship with the senior doctor, who I continue to be extremely close with, and which seems, I guess, somewhat unusual in these days. So, in that respect, it worked out extremely well for me. Certainly, we have streamlined and improved a lot of the things in the practice. I bought a very good practice. It was definitely not a fixer-upper. Nevertheless, we were able to kind of bring some efficiencies in, reduce a little bit the amount of time that we're worked, and actually, increase the size of the practice as well. So, in terms of things I would do differently, I don't know. It's hard to know. At what point along the step did you make a mistake that you learned from versus one that you wish you would have never made? Where I am today is obviously a product of all of these things. When I got out of residency, and when I was in residency for sure, I think I felt a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and I would say like it all worked out pretty well, and I feel good about that. And so, but again, I can't tell, was it that stress? Was it that fear maybe that was motivating me to get to this point? Or, could I maybe chilled out a little bit? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's not in my nature to just chill out, but it does seem that things that always seem like a huge deal in hindsight seem like a very small deal. And in fact, it helped, in more ways than it actually hurt, I think, in hindsight. So, but there's many of those. With anyone who starts a practice or who builds a practice up, there's so many moments you look back on and you're like, man, that wasn't that big of a deal. Or maybe there are things where like, man, I really should have done something differently. Sure.
Don't buy used sterilizers. There's one.
Okay. Don't buy a used X-ray machine.
Used X-rays, used sterilizers. Be careful with some of these big purchases when they're used. You get a good deal, but then you're repairing it. And, as soon as it fails once, then it's out of service, and then it starts this whole cycle. So, I had a couple of used sterilizers that were kind of a disaster.
Yeah. In the grand scheme, I think you're going to be okay. Used sterilizers.
I think so.
Yeah. My used X-ray had some issues, but it made it for 6 years, so I'll take it.
Oh, that's better. That's better than me.
Yeah, it's not so bad. But had a couple follow-up questions real quickly about the Herps. And just kind of briefly, what's your Herps design, if you don't mind sharing?
So we use a pretty standard Herps design. We order it from Specialty Appliances. It's their removed occlusal crown. So it's not a band, it's a crown, but the entire occlusal surface has been removed for a little bit of extra rigidity. Those are on the upper sixes. An expander if needed, although that's probably only 10% or 20% of cases where we're doing it. And then the lower arch is a lower, same thing on the sixes, cantilever arms, all made by Specialty off a digital scan from an iTero scanner. I think they're easy appliances to deliver. I think they are robust. I don't like some other unnamed class 2 correctors that I feel like are fragile and doctor time intensive. So I'm a big fan of the Herps, and they just work. So, yeah, same for me. Another question about why you use that over the twin block. I'll answer before you do. I've never used the twin block. It seems like a lot of doctor time, but what's your thought? Same. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience. And for me, one of the appeals of the Herps is that it's a non-compliance fixed class 2 corrector.
Yeah, I like the set it and forget it nature of it. So let's shift on into this. We'll talk about the Elevate Orthodontics Podcast. Hugely popular. I still have people come and talk to me about the interview I did with you, which has been maybe a couple years now. But you started the podcast, it seems like years and years ago. It was January of 2017. It's really not that far ago or that long ago, but it seems like it. Does anyone remember who the first guest was? Anyone? It was Neil Kravitz. You remember that, right?
That's right.
Yes. It was my last guest, ironically, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's obviously been hugely influential, I think, in our profession. I think it's helped, at least for me, become aware of some people that I wasn't otherwise aware of, and to spend some time with people that I was aware of and really be inspired and learn. And I'm sure you've learned a lot too. But let's see. What was, I guess, the primary impetus for starting it? When did you decide, like, I think this is what orthodontics need and I want to do it?
So, I mean, I like podcasts. Actually, I feel, I think especially, and at the time I started, I was really into podcasts. And I wanted an orthodontic podcast. I listened to business podcasts. I listened to dental podcasts. There were a lot of ones out there, and I was basically waiting for someone to start an orthodontic podcast because that would just be the best. Something about that format, I think there's an intimacy that comes with the kind of unscripted nature of a podcast and being right in someone's earbuds. I love it. I think it's a great medium. Perhaps we've maybe hit peak podcast or past peak perhaps in 2019. But in general, I think it's a fabulous thing. So no one did it. And so I eventually said, okay, just like anyone, I don't love how my voice sounds, recorded or anything like that. But and I was like, who am I to do this in some ways? But, on the other hand, I just went for it. I tried to launch it as quickly as I could. I did all the work for the first 4 episodes in like 2 weeks because I felt that if I took a long time to do it, I would talk myself out of it. So I launched it, and then it was off to the races. Yeah,
that's cool. Well, I will say, you said something about not liking your voice. I think you have a great podcast voice. I think anyone who's listened to it, I think you're as much a part as why that was successful as the guests. Very knowledgeable, and I think very moderate's the wrong word, but like in a good sense. Like you're a calming presence in that environment. It reminds me of sort of like interviewers from yesteryear, like you're sort of classical news interviewer. Now, everyone has to be very bombastic and opinionated and kind of goofy, but it's really, you're really good at it. You have a talent for it. You've done, at the time of this recording, you've done 68 episodes. 68, it's crazy. This is 12 for me, 68. Do you mind sharing it? And I don't want you to hurt any feelings here, but what are your favorite interviews that come to mind? Some of your favorites, perhaps.
Yeah, that's kind of like picking your favorite child. We've had so many great ones. I'll just throw out a few that are just immediately popping into my head. I really loved my interview with Alfred Jackson. If you go back and listen to him, he's such a great guy, and just the sincerity in that interview was fabulous. It was an honor for me to have Jim Dolly, the white coat investor, on the podcast. He did a great job, and he was just a pro, someone who just knew how to do it and was great with his answers. And then maybe my favorite one is an oral surgeon I had in town. If you haven't listened to this episode, go listen to Len Weldon. I don't know what number it is, but Len Weldon is an oral surgeon who has now retired. He practiced here in Keene. And you'll learn more in that interview about how to treat patients and just people in general in a way that will make you happy, that will kind of humanize your experience as a doctor and just make you a better person. It's a fabulous interview.
Yeah, he was a special guy. I do recall that interview, and I could tell that you just tell when something's going well. And I guess he was like a mentor to you in many ways.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that was a special one for sure. So you've interviewed really a good cross-section of our profession. You've interviewed doctors and consultants and people outside of our profession. The Jim Dolly one was great. Is it Jim or John?
James. Yep.
James. We'll go with Jim. And so I guess as you've interviewed 68 different people, are there any consistent themes or concepts that have continued to come up again and again with guests?
Yeah, I would say I'm actually going to be giving a little lecture at the AAO, a little bit about some of the lessons learned from the podcast. So this has been on my mind a little bit. Very briefly, I will say that that the orthodontists, the people in our profession, are kind. They want to do things the right way and treat people the right way. And I think that when we try to do the right thing the right way, I think that we are in a profession where that really pays off. And I don't think that's true for necessarily everyone in the world, but in our profession, if you treat people the right way and you try to do things properly and do your best work, you will be rewarded just wildly. And we're so fortunate in that regard. And the other thing I think is that, a lot of people, I think, are held back by their own ways of thinking. And so as you start to kind of listen to the podcast and hear some of the challenges or some of the maybe the self-limiting thoughts that people have had and how they've been able to overcome those, to me, I love hearing those stories, and I love realizing that, if someone else has done it, I can do it too. And I'm where they were maybe 5 years ago, and that means I can be where they are in 5 years or in 2 years, because I now have a little bit of a head start.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So that's what I've learned in doing, 11 of these so far, is mindset seems to be the thing that comes up most often among really successful doctors. Is they have a more open mindset and a more forgiving mindset. It seems. And so I guess, are there any other important things that you've learned that you've applied to your practice from doing the podcast?
Oh, so much. And the benefit of a podcast, what you have to realize is, imagine if you take the list of people that I've had on my podcast and think, what if I could call these people up and ask them whatever question I wanted for an hour? And how much you would benefit from that personally. I mean, that's basically what I've been able to do. And so a lot of the questions that I ask on the podcast are things that I'm struggling with in my practice, or that I want to know more about, or that I want to implement. And then I get the added bonus of having then a relationship with that person after the podcast is over. And so when I say, oh, you talked about how Dan Bills, you talked about how you set this up with your recall system, and you did this, and you had this thing. I have a question now. I'm trying to implement it, and how does this work? And I can get a little bit of follow up and a little bit of help with that. So no, I mean, of anyone who's benefited from my podcast, it's been me the most, because I've had the most to learn, and I've just soaked in all that knowledge and applied it as much as I can in my practice.
For sure. Yeah, that's the relationship part of this has been really special. I got to, one that comes to mind is Chris Benson, and interviewing him, and now feeling like I have a friendship with him from doing that interview.
Yeah.
We were both exhausted that night. I think he would have rather slept, but it was a great interview, and it was really
great guy.
My surrogate father.
Chris represented me when I bought my practice.
Oh, there you
and
go.
I've been in basically semi-constant contact with him ever since. He's one of my favorite guys in orthodontics.
Yeah, well, I trust him because he has red hair. So there you go.
That's right.
I wanted to say, before we get into our next section, I am drinking from not a mug, which is my comfortable spot, but from what do you call it? It's a tumbler, I guess, sort of, kind of.
Yeah.
And it is a breast cancer research tumbler. And I'm wearing a little pink tonight. And so, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. If you're not doing something in your practice, maybe try and do that. We keep it pretty simple. If people get pink ties, we donate $10, and we give that money at the end of the month to Susan G. Komen, a local chapter of that. And so breast cancer has affected a lot of us. And so just some awareness for that. So let's shift on into investments. We're going to talk about financial investments and practice investments. One thing I always notice in your podcast, I love your little editorial at the beginning. I don't know what percentage of those have to do with financial matters, but it's probably the highest percentage. Yeah, which is great because it's what you know and you're good at it. I think you're a savant when it comes to financial matters, and you might say, I'm not a savant, but maybe in the orthodontic world, that's how I feel about social media. People say, you're such an expert. It's like, well, among orthodontists, perhaps, but
perhaps.
But I guess before we get into some specific questions, did you ever consider going into finances? Was that something you thought you would do, or is it just an interest you discovered along the way?
I would say I never considered it as a full-time profession. I've always had a lot of interest in it. Finance is something that has a lot of moving parts, and I'm always interested in things and taking things apart and figuring out how they work. So, I did have a business minor in college, and I would say that for me, I wanted to be financially successful in my life. And I realized that I would not only need an income to do that would kind of propel me along those lines, because I certainly wasn't going to inherit any capital. So I needed to start with an income, and then how to manage that seemed to be important as well. So I would say for people, if it's not something you love, that's okay. You don't have to do it. If it's something you can tolerate doing, though, it's an extraordinarily, I think this is Dr. Dolly's comment here, it's an extraordinarily well-paid hobby. In other words, learning about your finances and getting that to be a little bit of a side interest for you can pay some pretty big dividends. Yeah,
for sure. It's also, a lot of us trust financial planners. I do, because I don't have it as a hobby. I'm not an expert at it. I have read The White Coat Investor, and it went over my head.
That's good.
A little bit. And I've taken what's his name? Who's the guy from Tennessee? The financial guy. Oh,
Ramsey.
My goodness. Ramsey, yeah, I've taken Dave Ramsey's course, and it's just not like connected with me. So, but my first financial planner was actually arrested on like 9 fraud counts.
Oh.
So my second one is a family friend, and I feel comfortable with him. But a lot of us are entrusting people that maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should do this on our own, and it's one of those things. Maybe we should not delegate this out. But anyway, so if anyone's out there that's starting in this, or that's never just really like kind of me, has never really dove into it. What would be your first recommendation or two when it comes to personal financial management?
Okay.
Big question.
This is good. Low-hanging fruit here. First off, I would say that when it comes to this, the most important part, and certainly I think most of the audience here is probably, younger orthodontists in their 30s, 40s, is probably most of them. The most important thing is not what you're invested in. So that's what all the attention gets focused on, right? Is like what stocks and bonds to buy and how to set up your portfolio. That's probably like the least important thing for you, especially for the first 2/3 of your career. The most important thing is understanding your personal cash flow. So you go to work, you have this income that comes in, and then how you manage that and how you kind of allocate that money becomes super important. So, the first thing I would say is don't take your big fat orthodontist paycheck and just put it in your family's checking account and hope that then you do the right thing with it afterwards. I think that's one thing. Figure out what your budget is for your family. Everyone hates to do that, but even if you just do it retrospectively, try to get a sense of what you think you might spend by looking at what you have spent, and then put that in your checking. And then, my direct deposit goes to like 5 different accounts. The investment account, one goes to a savings. If you want debt reduction, if you're paying student loans, kind of figure out where you want your money to go and give it all some jobs. Like you might cheat a little bit. Like you might decide that you just have to, go on this vacation. You don't have it, so you steal it from one of the other accounts occasionally. But at least you're aware of it, right? So, I think that's like a very basic thing, and it kind of points to the need to have a little bit of a plan to understand what you want in terms of financial goals. Like, do you want to pay your student loans off in 5 years? Is that a goal that you have? Do you want to buy a house? And don't just want these things, but just like when you applied to orthodontic residency and you said, okay, I'm going to go to an orthodontic residency program. Well, I better go do some research with some random, periodontist professor because I got to do some sort of research. I'm going to get it. You put together a plan, right? You figure out like what are the steps that I need to get to those goals, and you do it in your practice, and it's the same thing in your personal finance. So figuring out what your plan is, writing down some kind of goals or some goal posts for what you're going to hit, and then evaluating periodically. I do it quarterly to try to figure out when you're going to be able to get to these goals. And if you're on track, are you making the right progress towards your goals?
Yeah, for sure. Any pro tips, maybe for people that are on a different level, that are already through all those basic things, they've already got it all set up, anything maybe in the last year or two that you've done that you're really keen on?
Now that is a good question. I would say the nowadays the kind of foundation of my personal, I've talked about this on the podcast, the foundation of my personal financial management is the quarterly review. And so my wife and I, we sit down every quarter and we evaluate, our income, our spending. We look at our goal sheet. We try to track where our goals are. And then we have, this is getting pretty, you asked for pro tips, right? So this is getting kind of nerdy. What we've done is I've written out basically all of the tasks that you might want to do in terms of personal finance: insurance, debt reduction, college savings, retirement savings, practice and personal interactions, taxes, all of these things. And instead of trying to tackle them all at once, we do them, a couple of them each quarter. So, in the spring, we might look at taxes. In the summer, we might look at insurance. In the fall, we might look at college savings. And so we're not totally overwhelmed or bombarded. We kind of divide those things up and we sit down. This takes us an hour-ish, maybe two, if we get into an actual meaningful, deep financial conversation with your spouse about what your goals are. And you might find that it turned into a productive, non-confrontational financial discussion. So that, I think, is really the backbone of how we kind of do our personal finances.
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad I asked. That's a great way to approach it, I think. So Faraz Najib, I probably said that incorrectly. I hope I got that right. He asked this question: would you pay all of your student loan or pay your house first? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but go ahead.
So that's a variation on, I think, a common question. Most people with this excess income are trying to figure out where to put it. The most common question I'll answer first, which is, do I pay off student loans and invest my money? That's the most common question. And I would say the answer is both. For me personally, if it was between a student loan and a home mortgage, I would pay off my student loan first. The only collateral on my student loan is like my own. I felt it was like a mortgage on my brain. So I wanted to be free of it. And mortgages are funny too, in the sense that if you move, you might end up buying a different house. And then, what was really the huge exciting thing about paying off the first mortgage. So I would prioritize student loans, obviously interest rate dependent. If you're in one of these weird situations where you locked in 1.01% for the next, 4,700 years, maybe let it ride. Yeah,
for sure. Good. I got Faraz's name correct. So now I'm on cloud nine. Let's shift into this. Let's shift into credit card rewards. And I know this is not like your defining characteristic as a financial person, but I know you're really into it. I know you got a spreadsheet. I want to talk about it. I think, in fairness, credit cards, especially among financial gurus, are a little controversial. Dave Ramsey, his name escaped me earlier. Again, not a financial guy here. But he tells his followers, to cut their credit cards up and things like that. I don't think orthodontists fall under the same category as the average Dave Ramsey listener. And so I think you got to keep that in context. But, and so I think it's okay for us to have credit cards. I have a few credit cards, but I know you have maybe more than that. So what is it with credit cards? Where are you at with all that right now?
Good question. I do think that you spend more money on a credit card. I like to think that I don't, but every time that I pretend like that I'm like an above average driver or, whatever it is, I try to check myself, and be like, no, I'm probably in that group that the research study described. So you probably do spend incrementally more. Certainly, if you are not paying off your credit cards in full at the end of the month, you have no business using credit cards. I mean, that's the obvious thing about it. Yeah. So I agree with that. And if that's a problem, then just eliminate from your life because it's not worth it. With credit cards, I think of them. Did you go to the Ben Folds concert? Did you tell me you saw Ben Folds?
I did. Yeah, I went to and I used a credit card. I was kidding.
Okay.
What is it? What is that? Credit card?
So Ben Folds has a song called "Free Coffee." It's one of his not well-known songs, "Free Coffee," and the chorus says, "When I was broke, I needed it more. Now that I'm rich, they give me free coffee." And that's really what credit. this isn't going to change your life. This isn't going to make you're an orthodontist. You've got a great income. But certainly you can, earn some extra points there. So I would say in the past, I've flown in business class to Tokyo and stayed at the Hyatt, whatever, where they filmed Lost in Translation, all on points. And we've gone to Italy and we've done all sorts of great things with the points that we, probably wouldn't have done otherwise. That being said, I do think, and at one point I had like 25 credit cards in a spreadsheet. I think the game is winding down, unfortunately, folks. So I have gone away from a lot. I find that earning points is one part of the process, and redeeming is another. So if you haven't signed up for all these cards, you can do it, and you can probably get $5,000 or $10,000 worth of value just off the sign-up bonuses in the next couple of years by doing it, which is fun. Maybe $20,000. If you can redeem them properly, and that becomes a little bit of it's getting more and more difficult to do properly. So I have to admit, I am moving away from some of the points and miles, and I'm going more and more to the cash back. So I'm most of my spending now is on a Bank of America. It's like a preferred rewards thing. If you have enough money with them, you get 2.625%. So, 2 is the standard, right? And you can get 2 all day long everywhere. I can get 2.62 with these guys.
And you'll be retiring 3.5 weeks earlier now because of that.
I think 4.5 actually.
Well, yeah. You're big on that. You're bullish on it or whatever. Bearish. I don't know. See again. Finances. Well, thanks for indulging the question. It sounds like you're not as excited as you once were, but I guess that's the way of things. Once too many people find out about things, too many blogs are made, it's over, right?
Yeah.
So, well, let's shift into this. Investments in terms of practice. You talked about this in the pre-interview. You said that 2 investments that help with the building the practice of your dreams, investing in systems and investing in people. Let's talk about investing in systems first. I guess, what are some of the systems you use each day that are essential to your success?
Did I use the phrase practice of your dreams?
I don't know if you did or not. That doesn't sound like you. Yeah,
that's great.
Like you. Maybe I just made that up. Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say that this is really a reflection of the path that I have kind of gone down in our practice. We have always had very good people in our practice. Even when I bought the practice, I inherited a good team, and so we've always had a core group of people that have been good. But when I did buy the practice, I noticed that there were a lot of things that could have been done a lot more efficiently. The way that we started patients. When I bought the practice, it was a traditional kind of 3-step screening, records, consult, SEPs, start. They had to come to our office 5 times to get their braces on. That clearly was an inefficient system. The way that we did our financial arranging, I think, was a little bit inflexible. The way that we did our scheduling, we had these kind of open templates where the front desk could put the patients wherever they wanted, and it would create some days that worked and some days that didn't. Timing our procedures, there's a limit to how granular you can get with that. But having, I always say, like with doctor time scheduling, it's like, do you believe in it or not? And it's like, well, I don't believe that it ever works perfectly. But I would much rather start with something that at least in theory has a chance of working than just starting with like nothing and just like letting chaos reign. So, starting with a little bit of a grid that makes sense. We spent a lot of time kind of going system by system in our practice and trying to understand what were the weaknesses or what were the parts where people were getting tripped up, and really reworking all of those and then writing them down, creating procedure manuals for financial, for the front desk, for the clinic, streamlining, the ways that our assistants did things. We would have assistants, and some of them would do it this way and some of them would do it that way. And they would say, oh, no, I don't do it this way. That's how so-and-so does. And I was like, why are we doing different ways? It's so hard to troubleshoot when we have a problem. So standardizing and making systems, that was kind of the first, I think, focus in our practice, was really getting those systems under control. And it really started to pay big dividends when people understood what their job was and they understood how to do it. And we would ask them, what about your job is frustrating, or what is it that patients hate every single time? Is there a way we can change that? So, looking at all of those workflows and systems, and it's a huge pain, and it can be a tremendous it's like a puzzle that you have to unravel sometimes, because when you change one system in your practice, you think, oh, I'm just going to change this procedure and the way that it works. Well, then the front desk says, well, now how do we schedule this? And the financial person has an opinion because they used to see the parents at that opinion. Now you want to change it. So, you make a small change and it like breaks 5 other things. So you have to kind of understand how everything fits together. But investing in systems for us has been huge.
Yeah. So how do you make sure that these systems actually happen consistently? That's another thing, is that a lot of us may go to meetings and may hear this and be like, yeah, I got to do that differently, or the way we're doing this is broken. You bring it up, it maybe happens, or maybe it doesn't even happen, and then it's not happening for sure in a month or two. Is this is a product of monthly meetings, of morning huddles? How do you keep people accountable on those sorts of things?
So the best solutions in your practice are going to be, I don't know. You can argue this from both sides, but I would say that in general, the real solutions, the ones that are going to be long lasting, are going to be ones that are readily evident to everyone why they want to do this. In other words, if you come back from a meeting and you just have a great idea, you just throw it at your staff and they don't understand the why behind it, they weren't part of the process, it's not going to happen. Your implementation is going to be atrocious. And I agree that implementation is where the money is. I mean, that's where all the value is, right? I mean, and ideas. I had on my mirror in my house for like 2 years this quote. It was like, ideas are a dime a dozen, implementation is everything. And I would look at that every single morning. But that, I think the implementation isn't so much like hounding people. It's like getting with them and trying to talk about what the problems are and getting their input. And you have to kind of collectively come to a solution. Like if you have an answer to a problem, but your staff don't want to do it because they don't see that it benefits them, it's probably not the right solution. The things that we've done, when I have of my 6 assistants, I only have one that was with me when I bought the practice. And, she talks about, oh, do you remember when we used to do it this way? How horrible was that? And I think we did it okay back then, but she's like, now it's so much easier. We do it this, and it's streamlined, and it's easy, and it's patients like it. So you have to really, I think, get involved and make sure that it's an idea that works, and that and if it doesn't, then it's okay. Like I've gone back to the practice and said, we're going to try this. And then we don't do that. Like we don't do that anymore. We failed, or it was a bad idea, or, that's okay. I would say that being afraid to implement is worse than trying and failing.
Yeah, for sure. Cole does a good job of summarizing when he brings up a new idea. He'll talk about, I can't remember his exact, acronym that he's got for it, but basically brings it up to his team. He sort of opens it up for discussion. He talks about how others have tried it and it's worked. And he said, you know what, we'll reevaluate in 3 months. If it's not a good thing, we'll get rid of it. And I think that's a generally good way of thinking about it, is that when we bring these things up, he also mentions this, which I think is smart. When you go to your oldest team members, you go to them first. You try and get them bought into it before you bring it to the rest of the team. It's a very, very brilliant way of thinking through it. And so we've adapted that, and it makes a lot of difference. I think if you can get the buy-in, and you can also get ownership at the same time, where they feel like they've helped to generate these ideas. So I can come to the meeting and say, you know what, I've met with Jennifer on this, and I've met with Nicole and Trisha, and they all feel really good about this. They think it's going to work. It may not be perfect. We're gonna do it for a few months, and we'll check back and see. It just makes things a lot easier of a pill to swallow.
Absolutely.
So, anyway,
I like that.
Hardly ever works when you just bring it down from above and very draconian. So
I think if you're real with your staff, if you are open and don't come across as like a know-it-all, and just say, look, and point to your past failures, which we all have plenty of, and own them, and I think that then your staff will respond to that. They'll understand that you're trying, that you're not trying to make their life miserable. And I think that works out a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about investments in people. I often say that, I don't know if there's like the most important thing you can do in an office, but I do think it's certainly the people that you hire and the team that you put together, and really the culture of your office is really, I think, number one. We talk about a lot of other little minor things. We talked about cone beam earlier. Like cone beam to me at best would be number 73 on my list, although I've heard salespeople say, hey, it's number 1. It's the most important thing. But to me, it's culture. It's the people on your team. But I guess, what are some of your short-term and long-term goals as it pertains to investments in people? And I guess in people doesn't mean just team members, but just people in general. I mean, how do you see that?
Yeah, so I mean, this has kind of been a little bit something that I've tried to pivot towards more and more. I think when I bought the practice, like I say, we were focused on making sure that our systems got up to date and that was good. Certainly, we've always had a focus on our patients. I feel like I've always kind of been oriented towards patients and their parents, but I feel like in the last year or two, I've really tried to engage a little bit more with our team members. They might disagree with me, but I've tried to understand a little bit more what they need. Try to, I guess, reward them a little bit more financially and non-financially, and really, as our practice has become more successful, just kind of reinvest our time and energy into the people. We've done more training. We've done a tremendous amount of in-office training for clinical. Training is expensive. When you take an hour and you stop seeing patients and you pay everyone to sit around in a circle, and you like try as hard as you can not to like have like the dollars ticking off in your head every minute that goes by as you like add up everyone's per hour salary that's looking at you. It's expensive, but for us, it's been really well worth it. And on the clinical side in particular, really training our assistants. I have to give Jeff Kozlowski a lot of credit for this. Really training our assistants to understand how orthodontics works, to understand why we are doing things, and when they understand and to understand what they're doing. So my orthodontic assistants now are awesome, and they are smart, and they are engaged in the process. The worst thing you can do is have assistants where you come over, they've untied the patient, they tell you the brushing grade, and then they look at you and ask you what you, the godlike doctor, are going to proclaim is the next treatment step for this patient. Like, that is the worst way to run your clinic. Yeah. You need to have assistants that understand, okay, Dr. Miller, we're over here, that lower wire, I still have a rotation on number 20. I can't get out. I'm gonna go ahead and steel tie that tooth. The upper's ready to go up to our Tango Night Tie, 1425. Next visit, we're gonna take an x-ray in 7 weeks. What do you think? Yeah. And it's awesome. 9 times out of 10, they're totally right. And they like their job more. They're more engaged. They're explaining things to patients about what the next step is. The procedure's half done by the time you get over to the chair. And then you have time to visit with the patient, to talk with the parent. And it's effective, it's efficient, everyone enjoys it more. And you have another set of eyes looking at what you're doing. So when I'm finishing, the rule for my assistants is if we're in 1925 TMAs, which is our finishing wire, when I come to the chair, either you're going to tell me what teeth need to be adjusted and how, or you're going to tell me that they're ready to get their braces off. So those are the only two options if they're in 1925 night tie. Yeah. So and so they look at it, they're like, oh, this tooth needs to come out a little bit, or this needs to come down a little bit. And then I look at it and I say, oh yeah, I see that. What do you think about this tooth here? And now I've got 2 sets of eyes. And the other thing I tell them is, if this was your child, if this was your son, would they be ready to get the braces off? Or would you be like scrutinizing it because your child, you want it to be perfect? Well, every child needs to be that way. So you need to get in there and really dissect that case. Because I know the orthodontic assistants, if it was their kid, they would find all the little things. So I want them to be in there looking at marginal ridges, looking at torque, looking at everything. So when I'm talking about investing in people, it's really surrounding yourself with people that have all the skills, have all the training, have all the education. I want high quality, educated people surrounding me. Makes my life great, and we deliver better care.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That's great. A couple of things I just picked up on, actually. So Kozlowski talks about training your assistants to be like you would residents, if you're in an orthodontic program. And that's really opened my mind to a lot of that. But a couple of the things you just said, it was funny is we get to the finishing wires and they're just sort of like, here you go, doc,
Yeah, what is that? Why do we do that? That's ridiculous.
I don't know. So it's like when it was final details, I'm like, because I got to go over there and like figure it out. But yeah, I need to improve on that. But what I have found though is I've worked on some of this. It's a process. Oftentimes I come up and it's just like they've already started it, or they've already got kind of an idea of what needs to happen. And it's great, like you said. I mean, it's 19 times out of 20, it's exactly what I would have done anyway. So I love that.
But you have to take a little bit of time. So we sit down, we go through cases, We kind of talk about the treatment sequence. You have to be somewhat disciplined as a doctor. So if you want really empowered assistants, you can't be these doctors that just like do it one day this way and the next day the other way just because you want to. Like you have to systemize yourself, and you have to be disciplined so that people can think alongside of you. But it pays dividends, and it's totally worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Perfect. Let's shift into the last section of questions. My favorite category on Jeopardy, other than when it's Bible questions, because I always get those right. That's like the only time I feel smart on Jeopardy, if it's classic rock or Bible. But it's potpourri. I like potpourri because you never know what it's going to be. So we have a few questions that really don't fit into categories. So let's just jump into them. You mentioned this concept, lifestyle design and orthodontics. I don't know exactly what you mean by that, so illuminate us, if you will.
Whew. All right, it's almost 11 Eastern. We're going to get into lifestyle design here.
This is good. It's good.
So we are in a fabulous profession, I think, as orthodontists. We know this, but we really need to think about what it is that we want out of our practices, and certainly I think lifestyle design is a kind of a concept that is exercised by those who perhaps have the luxury to exercise it. So if you're $900,000 in student loan debt, I don't know that I would be focused on lifestyle design. I would be focused on income and debt repayment maximization. But eventually you get to a point in orthodontics, I think, where your potential income it becomes pretty large. And, you have to start asking yourself these questions about, the marginal utility of an extra dollar in your life and how much that's really going to benefit you. So, I think that, when for me, I talked about this earlier, I don't want to figure out how to race to the finish line as quickly as I can, working myself to death. And get out, because I can't stand it anymore. I would far rather, and financially in the long term, this is going to be much better for you. I would far rather find something that works for me. And I talked about this, finding a job that I love to come to work and so that talks about the amount of work that you're doing, the number of patients that you're seeing a day. It means that the way that your staff is assembled and trained, their job, is ostensibly to make your life better and to make your job easier. And I think that a lot of orthodontists and a lot of people in general, they kind of fall into a certain way that they've done it, and then they don't ask themselves, what if we could do it this way? And I do think that I have maybe less inhibitions when it comes to questioning why we're doing something and being willing to do something differently. I remember I mentioned when we went to Japan, my kids were small. We didn't really have babysitters. We had moved here. I told my wife, I want to go to Japan without the kids for like 9 days. And she was like, that's never going to happen. And I'm like, well, why not? And because of this. And, you work through it, you figure out the child care, you figure out this, you credit card points, boom, but I think you can, if you want something, in your practice, in your lifestyle, I think you just need to figure out the steps that are there. And there's no reason why you can't do it. There's no reason why you have to wait for a lot of things. And I again, acknowledging that a lot of this is derived from the fact that we are in just such a privileged position. Yeah. But recognizing that fact, why not make the most of it? And why not, create a life that you don't want to retire from?
Yeah. And I think it's this idea of beginning with the end in mind, and the end should be the lifestyle. It should be, what is it you're trying to accomplish each day, and then you kind of work backwards from that instead of the reverse, which I think we sort of get on this sort of current that orthodontics pushes us on, and it's all about starting more patients, adding another office. And I think another thing that's really going to be a strong current coming up is consolidation, and I think there will be a lot of pressure seemingly to join up with groups as they form or to consolidate with other specialists. And I think for many of us, probably we just stay on our own. Maybe we start a fewer number of patients every year, but maybe we're still really happy. So I think that's going to be really interesting to track over the next few years. This year alone has had quite a few opportunities. And every time I've looked at it and I've sat with it and I've thought about it and prayed about it, I've been like, will that make me happier or feel more fulfilled? And the answer for me, at least, has been no. So we're sort of resolved to do what we're going to do. I know you have your wife in your practice, and I do too. And so we're, I think, very, very fortunate in those ways. But I think I would just implore anyone out there, as things come along and there's this thought of the sky is falling, it's probably not. And I think it's important to stay committed to the lifestyle that you want to have. And again, we're super blessed to be able to even have those conversations. But I love what I do.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, the bad part of orthodontics is the debt. That is the scary part of orthodontics. And for people that have that debt, I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for you. And so you need a concrete plan to tackle that. But I think if you can eliminate a lot of that debt from your life, and if you can, live perhaps like an orthodontist and not like a rock star, not like, you go to some of the meetings and you're like, whoa, these guys are living.
What if I'm both, Lance? What if I'm a rock star and an orthodontist?
Yeah.
But, he's like, what if you are?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. If your income is derived from orthodontics, perhaps stick with that. But so I just think as long as your lifestyle is somewhat normal, figure out how to get your debt under control, and then you'll have a lot of options in orthodontics.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think that's the thing I sort of forget about. I'm still in debt. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like I'm in the pressure that I was in the first few years. But if I talk to younger orthodontists, doctors who are still associates, residents, that is really the primary focus. So you hear, the two of us talking about lifestyle and, how easy it is. And I don't want to start more patients. I want to enjoy, that may sound the wrong way. So I think you're right. I think there is a turn there, though, where you do need to be able to focus on that. So it's 10 o'clock my time, 11 o'clock your time. I do want to get through a couple more questions, maybe go into the 10 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap up. But Lance West asked this question, another Lance like yourself. I got to ask it. He wants help in convincing his wife that he needs a private pilot's license. And he also asks about purchasing a plane. But I didn't know this. I did not know that you had a private pilot's license. So tell me about that real quick.
Yeah, so Lance is actually one of my very good friends. I don't know how many other Lances are out there in orthodontics, but it probably can count them on one hand. Yeah. So I'm fortunate to have him as a great friend. And, this is something I think that we both have an interest in. I have taken a little bit the plunge, and in the last couple of years have gone and gotten my pilot's license. So if flying around in small single-engine airplanes sounds fun to you, I would do it. It's awesome. It's amazing. It requires so many disciplines to be all joined together in one. There's a lot of studying. There's a lot of understanding weather and aircraft systems and communication and navigation. All of the aerodynamics, and then there's all this tactile aspects of flying. So I've loved it. It's been a super fun thing. It's something I've always wanted to do. My dad was really into aviation, although never got a pilot's license. His line was that he always had the itch, but he never had the scratch. And so I've kind of carried that boyhood dream, and now I've been able to do it. I'm working on my instrument rating. I'm almost done with that. So it's been fun. And to Lance, I would say yes. We got go for it. And I would say, I guess that applies to whatever else that you want to do. I hiked Mount Rainier in June. I went to Uganda with my brother last October, and thanks to Anil and Sheldon, and did an amazing trip there. So my dad died when he was 53 years old from cancer. And so I kind of a little bit in the back of my head, not really, but I kind of a little bit in the back of my head think I'm going to die when I'm 53 years old. So that in the sense that, like, if there's something I want to do or you want to do, then go ahead and do it, and figure out how to do it now and not to do it later.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was going to say, if you want to be excited about flying a private plane, don't watch La Bamba like I did when I was 7 or 8, and I'm scared to death.
This is Richie Valens and the Big Bopper.
And the Big Bopper, good call. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, moving on. A couple more questions.
The day the music died, right?
It is the day the music died. Yeah, you're exactly right. Maybe you're killing it with the music trivia. Now we're talking my kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
So you talked about overcoming resistance. Again, I don't know exactly what you mean about that, but I'm interested. I know what resistance means. Yeah. Right? I
gave you the most sparse notes.
No, this is perfect. Yeah. You've done this a few times, so we didn't have to do quite the diligent of pre-interview stuff. So I guess what are some areas of your life and practice that resist you, and how do you overcome them? And what do you mean by that with resistance?
So I'm blanking a little bit. Is it Prescott is the name of the author that writes these books? Do the Work is one, and then there's one on resistance. I think it's Stephen Prescott or something along the
Pressfield.
Pressfield. Thank you. I knew I didn't have that quite right. Pressfield. Go read these books by Stephen Pressfield on resistance. They're some of the most important books you could read. The resistance is basically whatever force in your life is preventing you from accomplishing your true goals. And it sounds kind of hokey. There's perhaps even a religious connotation to this, although I don't really think that's how I interpret it. It's anything that's preventing you. So it could be an internal force. It could be a person in your life. It could be anything that's holding you back from doing what you want. And the benefit of resistance and its main weakness is that when you feel resistance, it is always pushing you away from that which is most important and most desirable for you to be doing in your life at that time. And by giving you that signal, it identifies where you need to be focusing your efforts. Of course, it usually sucks to do it because it's like that. It preys on your own self-doubt. It preys on your own, ideas of what you're capable of, or the things that really freak you out, or the way that you think you're going to be perceived by other people. But if you wake up in the morning and you know that there's something you should do and you really don't want to do it, that feeling, it's like I've really tried to work hard to train myself to run towards those things, and we see it in our practices. That's the most obvious example. When you have a patient situation that's kind of getting out of control, or starting to happen, right? And you can tell that there's this mom and she's not having a good day and she's kind of yelling at your assistant, and you're kind of standing in the door frame of your office, and you're like deciding, like, do I just like go back in my office and just like, drink the rest of my culotta? Or do I like walk out into the clinic, go straight up to that mom and say like, hey, how's it going? Like, is there anything I can help with? If you can train yourself, and this is what I tell my team members, because team members have the same predisposition that we do, that we have to run towards problems, right? Mm-hmm. We don't run away from problems, we run towards them, and we try to extinguish them as quickly as we can. That's another thing, Neil Kravitz obviously is big on as well. But so when you feel that resistance, when you feel something pushing you away, that is great. That it's a homing beacon. It's telling you this is where you need to focus your efforts. This is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck in terms of your time and energy.
Yeah, love that. I'm glad I asked it. You had some good, these were some good ideas to talk about resistance. That's great. I've always felt this need to attack those sorts of things when they come up. I've never thought of it through that idea of resistance. But when I feel like something's not at peace or something's not at right or someone's not happy with me, I attack it. Like I have to fix it. It's just the way my personality works. And so,
yeah, which is why you're a successful person. But there are so many people that they try to kind of basically sneak away from all the problems until they become crises, right? And even a bigger concern is not that things in your life are going bad and are going to get worse, but it's what are the things that you could accomplish? What are the things that you're not allowing yourself to pursue that are never going to turn into a crisis in your life, but they're going to just be a huge missed opportunity. And you're going to look back on your life and say, like when I went to Uganda, my assistants were like, "You're crazy. Aren't you afraid you're going to get kidnapped or like malaria or whatever?" And my answer was, I'm much more afraid of getting to the end of my life and realizing I haven't done all the things I want to do than I am of crashing in a small SR-22 that Lance West wants to buy.
Fair enough. I guess that was a little bit of a jab at me. I guess I need to push against that resistance. I need to forget La Bamba and just embrace the airplane. So Anna, I'm gonna get pilot's lessons, and thank you, Lance, for inspiring me.
Yes.
But no, that's great. I think that's a huge mindset idea. It's also storming here, so if my power goes off, I do have a lantern just in case. So here's my last official question. Then we've got our TDO top 5. But I want to finish on this discussion on consultants. I know I allow consultants in this group. I have a lot of really good relationships with consultants. I think they're important to our profession. But I think the last few years have probably been interesting for consultants. You've probably commented on this. I've seen discussions on it. But before Facebook groups, there's really no like outlet for this sort of en masse learning that we all benefit from now. And that's been maybe 5 years now that we've had this. And I would assume that this has changed the game for consultants. At the same time, when I look at highly successful orthodontists, they always have a consultant or two, and they always go to these meetings. So I don't know that it's really changed anything. So I guess the first question is, has the paradigm shifted at all away from consultants? And if it has, what's the role of a consultant today?
So I don't know that the paradigm has shifted in theory, right? In theory, the consultant's role was always to come in and deliver a lot of value. In practice, perhaps in the past, that wasn't always the case because they could just kind of recycle ideas from practices. Now that it doesn't exist anymore. So that's a great thing for consultants. Consultants have to, really understand that this low-hanging fruit stuff, come in with a couple of novel ideas and razzle dazzle, and that doesn't exist anymore because you can get that all in Facebook groups. So really, I think consultants now, the ones that are really worthwhile, are going to shine even more. So that's great for consultants. I would say that if you are thinking about using a consultant in your practice, there's really two functions I think that a consultant has. The first is diagnosis. And honestly, I would be a little bit suspect of using a consultant to diagnose a problem in your practice. If you have like an intricate financial problem, perhaps a consultant is worth doing some diagnosis. If you have a vague sense that clinically maybe there are some things that may, like sterilization. Like if you're like, I don't even want to think about sterilization, I know it needs updating, I'm just going to bring someone in and they can do all the thinking.
Yeah,
but I would say the big sure, you don't want to think about that, that's fine. But I would say that most problems in your practice, new patient, like a lot of this stuff, like you should understand what the problem is in your practice. Like you should figure out what it is. And if you don't really understand the problem, I don't know that I would be hiring a consultant. I would be scared to hire a consultant. And I'm a little bit scared of these big full service consultants that come in and they're going to fix every problem in your practice. I think you have to really understand what is the problem and what it is you're trying to achieve. Then once you kind of figure that out, I think a consultant can be incredible and they can really turbocharge it. They can come in and they can really streamline that implementation process. So if the second role of a consultant is implementation, and that's where I've had great success with consultants. We've had consultants come in a lot on scheduling. We've had consultants work with our front desk. We've had consultants work with our sterilization, treatment coordinating, and we just hired a consultant to do some just a review of our some financial stuff. So and I would say that bringing someone in like that can kind of turbocharge things and help your team with accountability and some of the stuff we talked about earlier. But like I said, I think you have to understand what it is that you want out of them.
Sure. Yeah. Great thoughts. So shout out to all the consultants out there. Thanks for helping us.
Yeah.
Let's shift into this. This has been great. Obviously, I expected to learn a lot, and I have. So thank you for taking the time to do this, for going up to your office to do this for us. And we'll do these kind of lightning round of sorts. You do the same thing. So let's I may have been inspired by you to do this. So, this is going to be weird for you to do this, but let's jump into the first one. If you weren't an orthodontist, what would you be?
Astronaut.
Yeah.
No, that is like, I'm not in the habit of like quoting, what is it, Axe body spray, but nothing beats an astronaut. No, I mean, I love, like, that has to go with like the pilot's license and things like that. The whole concept is just so fascinating to me, and it's like the pinnacle of achievement and adventure and excitement. It's awesome.
That's a cool
I would never make it. I wouldn't make it, but I would aspire to it.
You might. I'd be scared to death. See, so you've got less resistance than I do, or maybe you've just leaned into your resistance. Also, our first Axe body spray shout out on this show.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And maybe our last. Who knows? Love it.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. In 2 to 3 words, what is your favorite thing about being an orthodontist?
Connecting with other people. I think that's more than 3 words, but connecting with other people, colleagues, patients, that's the best part.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So what's the one thing you wish you had known sooner as a resident or as a young orthodontist?
I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. I mean, I would say that we have a great profession. Work hard. I think that success is out there for you in orthodontics, and I think it's a bright future for our profession.
Yeah, I think that's maybe one thing to communicate along those lines is that things are not as bad as they might seem. So I wonder what it would have been like as a resident to have this greater connection to all these different orthodontists. And I worry that I might have been a little bit more negative or sort of down on the profession. I'm not saying that's all that's communicated, but it happens.
You're right. There are people out there kind of losing their minds. The sky is falling, but I think there's a ton of orthodontists out there that are successful and happy in their lives, and probably most of them are not on Facebook.
Well, that might be true. Another jab at me. I'm always on Facebook. Man, I thought I was doing okay. Just kidding. Who's your biggest influence and why?
My parents, and my dad was he was a physics PhD and worked in the chemistry department at the University of North Carolina. Brilliant guy. You could ask him any question about anything and he knew how everything worked. Really a big inspiration for me and just a great mentor. And then my wife, Becca, I got married when I was 21 years old. If my kids do that, I'll be very upset. We've married 17 years, so she's been there through everything, and it's just I don't know how I could do anything without her.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I was married at 22 for what it's worth, like a month older than 22, and it was one day after 22, so it was the day after her birthday. But anyway,
I was almost 22. I was like 2 weeks from being 22.
We're pretty similar. We also apparently we look like a boy men. So
yes.
Is that something that's bothered you to be told that you look like a kid for every day of your career? I mean, I get it every day.
Well, I'm getting it slightly less, but I will say, and I think I posted this on the post after Cliff called us out, but when I was 30, I think it bothered me a lot, and even though I pretended that it didn't, but I turned 40 in June, and I'm like, bring it, sure. Yeah. At this point, why not? So, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I remember getting really upset in the first couple weeks, and even kind of like talking back to people about it, and did not go over well. I was like, you know what? Why would I be mad about it? Who cares? So, yeah. And then lastly, what do you want to be remembered by, Lance?
So I don't really believe in being remembered. I don't remember my great grandparents. I think in a fraction of just a blink of an eye, we kind of are washed away on the sands of time. So I try not to think about creating a legacy. That's to me, it's a little bit, I think, of an arrogant thought. No offense to the question as it was asked, but my focus is on doing the best that I can for the right reasons, and it's not because I'm going to be remembered in any certain way. It's just because I think there's some value in doing the right thing for the right reasons. And then also just, maximizing the time that I have with my friends, with my family. I think for, most of us, we're not going to be remembered. History doesn't remember many people, and that's okay. Just live your best life, and your life is for you. And that's, for me, that's enough. Yeah, it's a great answer. Probably the most cynical answer I've received on that question, but no, it's a good one. I do think there's actually this sort of exaggeration's the wrong word, but with legacy, this sort of we exalt it to this level that's it's held as kind of like the highest purpose that one could have, and I think that really misses the point. I think it actually is perfect for a people group that's so egotistical and prideful that we'd be so concerned with how we'll be remembered. But I think there's some value, though, practically in establishing, what I want to be talked about at my funeral, in the sense of I do want to lead a life that's not given into resistance, and that's done these things, accomplished these things. At the same time, 10 years in, for who's going to actually remember me? Probably not that many people, and that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. It's a good answer. I like it. Lance Miller, I'm going to clap it up for you. Yeah, that's a lot of applause. That's amazing. That is. I do want to thank you for coming on the show. It means a lot to me. Go see Lance. Lance is going to be speaking at the AAO 2020 in Atlanta. They've put, actually, me and you, they put the two boy men on the stage together. Boys to men, I guess. We're going to be speaking. You're going to be talking on Orthodontic Podcast, which will be awesome. I'm going to be at the Mother of Pearls Conference in Newport Beach, California, October 18th and 19th. I'm going to speak Friday at 1:45 p.m. right after lunch. I think they're having like In-N-Out or something, which is awesome.
I'm going to be debuting a new topic on a book that I'm sure that you think is crap or something, because I can't win here, but it's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Orthodontist. You like that
I like
book?
that book a lot.
Okay.
That's a great book.
Thank goodness. It's a good one, right? My partner at Neon Canvas, Alex Rasmussen, he's going to be speaking the same day on how to bring it every day. It's a really good lecture. And then lastly, Relapse is going to be playing again. This is the only cover band, made up entirely of orthodontists. So I think our concert's going to be Friday night. Go to orthodonticpearls.org now to register. They did not ask me to say this, but I want you to be there. And I want to thank everyone who listens to the Digital Orthodontist live on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for subscribing, those who have done that, and thank you for giving a review. And if you've not done that, it would mean a lot to me if you would go give it a 5-star review and if you would subscribe. We're going to be back. I actually know what our next episode is going to be. I'm terrible at scheduling. But Sunday, October 20th, 10/9 Central Standard Time with Dr. Courtney Dunn. I wanted to have Courtney on. We finally got schedules aligned, and I know that'll be an incredible interview. I see her face. She's watching. Courtney's
hello. Awesome. Hey,
Courtney's awesome. I know she was on your show as well. So Sunday, October 20th, couple weeks, we'll be together with that. Hope to see you then. And thanks for spending your Sunday night with me. Hopefully you enjoyed it. This was better than football, right? This is so many NFL games you could be watching. And thanks to all the people that are going to be watching this later on. There's Courtney. Hi, Courtney. That's it. So, Lance, thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
All of us here at the Digital Orthodontist Live, I'm Dr. Kyle Pagala signing off, and we'll play the theme song. Here we go. So, Lance, are you like an early to bed kind of guy? Are you like tired right now?
I'm like a late to bed, early to rise. I got to be at the trainer at 5:30 tomorrow. So yeah, it's gonna be early.
Man, good luck with that. Okay, well, the rest of you, hopefully you have a great week. Hope you go into it feeling all inspired and excited to do orthodontics again. And we will see you on the next episode. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Good night.
See ya. Good night.
Bye.